what has real impact and the ability to shift and move the needle when it comes to matters of race is to apply equity. Equity, my friend, is ensuring the playing field is leveled so that everyone is given a fair opportunity based on their, keyword here, individual circumstances.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Welcome to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started.
From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented.
Hey there, lovely. It's almost June 30, which means it's almost the end of the financial year. And for that reason, I have a massive giveaway. I've taken over 30% off my signature program, Represented. This is where I get to support online business owners such as yourself on your racial awareness journey so that you can build a business that is intentionally inclusive. When you join by 30th of June, you will get a massive $500 off the cost of the program, as well as access to the pre-work module ahead of our next round in September. If you've ever wanted to do anti-racism work in a space that allows you to come as you are without guilt, shame, or judgment, then this, my friend, is the program for you. Head over to anikishuru.com/represented for all the details. The link is in the show notes. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Represented Podcast with me, Annie Gishuru. I was in a group coaching session with my students inside of my online program, Represented. And one of the participants said to me after completing the study for that current module that we were working on, and by the way, that was on allyship and advocacy, she said, I thought doing the work is calling out people. I've been getting it all wrong. But now I've discovered there's a better way. An option I didn't even know was available. And now I've found a way to do this work in a way that feels good and right for me. Now that feedback was gold to me because up until that time, I didn't think that there were students inside my program who thought that doing racial equity work was just about calling people out. And so this particular individual was able to breathe a sigh of relief because the way in which she saw call outs happening went against the person that she is. She felt very uncomfortable. She felt like she was being somebody else. Yet she still wanted to be a good ally. She still wanted to do the work, advocate, speak up. But doing this module was such an eye-opener for her because she discovered that this work can be done in a way that feels good and right for her. And here's the thing, it's not that anti-racism work needs to feel comfortable and good. I don't think it ever does. I don't think it ever gets to a point where you just feel you're 100% okay with it, whether you're a victim or the person who is causing the abuse, the oppression. It is uncomfortable for all parties, but there is a way that this work can be done that aligns with your values, that see you speak up, that see you have conversations, that see you begin to advocate in ways that perhaps you never thought you could do. But this is because of the way in which it has aligned with who you are as a human, and you feel that it is so important for you to be contributing to this conversation. Now, before we dive into the core of this episode, let's take a step back so that we are on the same page. Let's start by first understanding what equity in racial equity actually means, because equity and equality are not the same. And those are two things that people tend to use interchangeably, not understanding that they're vastly different. And so equality is when you treat everyone the same. In other words, you're not treating anyone less favorably than the other, which has its advantages, which is a good thing in certain circumstances. But the problem with equality is that it doesn't take into account our individual differences. It assumes we are all the same and we have the same access, we have the same opportunities, and not taking into account our individual circumstances, which is really key because we're all different. We don't all have the same needs. What has real impact and the ability to shift and move the needle when it comes to matters of race is to apply equity. Equity, my friend, is ensuring the playing field is leveled so that everyone is given a fair opportunity based on their, keyword here, individual circumstances. So an example here is when it comes to coaching and you have clients who come from racially diverse backgrounds, applying a lens which will support them based on their individual circumstances so they can feel understood, seen, and have a sense of belonging, which in return will create trust from them. And from there, the work tends to grow and they're able to work towards their goal because you've applied a lens that is individual to who they are. You're being equitable. But when you apply a one size fits all and not fully understanding the barriers, the challenges, the setbacks they may be going through, you risk being frustrated and not wanting to work with them because you're not able to help them get the results they desire. So I wear a different hat in my business. I'm a business coach as well for emerging life coaches who are at the very early stages of their business and they're beginning to set the foundations of their business. I support both white and women of color life coaches. And there's a vast difference with how those two groups present themselves. I know as a woman of color, the route that I'm taking with the women of color is vastly different than the route that the white women are taking because I'm taking into consideration their background. I'm taking into consideration the barriers, the challenges, how they need to present themselves as a life coach. They probably need to begin from scratch by talking about what a coach is in the first place for their target market, their niche, to understand what value they can bring. Whereas with potentially those who are white, this is language that has been used on a regular basis, or it's language that they're familiar with at the very least. And so they may not be beginning from that far away, but there's that understanding that this is something that can be of value to the individual. Going back to women of color, this is something that is viewed as a luxury. This is something that is viewed as somebody who has that extra resource, and it's only for those who are wealthy. And so there's a lot of understanding that mindset and being able to dispel that myth, so to speak. So how I'm holding space for these two different groups is based on their individual circumstances, and in so doing, creating equity across the board. So now that you have an understanding of what equity is, let's get back to what people are getting wrong about racial equity. Number one, thinking that you need to call people out on their racism, and that is the only way to do it, to be a good ally, like my student thought. Do you know that studies have shown that when we constantly correct and not apply a caring approach, this toxic correction, this toxic perfectionist, so to speak, it is unlikely that you, the person who is constantly calling people out, will want to continue doing the work because it will become unsustainable and it will leave the other party feeling attacked, even if they might be on the wrong. And let's not get confused here, or don't get me wrong. There is room for calling out. There are people who do need to be called out. But what I'm trying to let you know here is that doing it alone is not sustainable and can lead to burnout. Point number two, which is really closely related to point number one, it's not about constantly policing people and being on the lookout for what word they used that is wrong, but it's about having conversations and making statements that allow you to go deeper and not come across as though you are attacking them, because the minute you attack, people go into defense mode. So saying statements such as, help me understand where you're coming from, because from my understanding, what you said could make someone who identifies in that way feel excluded or unsafe. See how that is so different, and allows somebody to reflect and allows them to come back at you with a response that is helping you understand. They're not being defensive. It's a more respectful dialogue, which in turn has the ability to bring people along rather than pushing them away. Number three, consuming more than you are taking action. I've seen this so often, even with clients who have come into my space, who have gone like, I have a whole list of books. I've read this book left me feeling like this. I had my eyes open in this way, but they've read, but they really haven't taken any action. So we're seeing this trend of where there are people who are obsessed with new information and just consuming it and putting it down. What's the next thing that I can consume? What don't I know that I need to know? And in this coaching and personal development industry, it can have a negative effect in that the more you consume, you feel as though you are doing the work, but you are not taking action. So making changes and seeking to grow and continue to operate in the same way, if you're not doing that, if you're not making those changes, if you're not having that personal desire to grow and to operate in a different way, that you're changing the way you do things in your business, that you're changing the way you do life and the things that you are engaged in, if you're still doing the same thing after consuming all of this, then my friend, you've actually missed the entire point. Number four, seeking to be told what to do and not applying critical thinking. What has been so eye-opening in this current round of Represented, and this group has been absolutely exceptional. I feel like I've been a student as well. As much as I've been their guide, I feel like they have also opened my eyes into so many other areas of how I can do better and be a better teacher by understanding the things that they have to grapple with. So one of the students in this cohort has come back a second time, and second time doing Represented has just been so impactful in that it has allowed her to go deeper. The first time was a little bit surface. It was a lot of shock and awe and going like, I didn't know that this was wrong. There was so much awareness. Right now, it's more like I have the awareness. Now it's the inner work. I need to work on me. I'm not pointing at fingers and going like, at least I'm not like that person. I'm looking to me and I'm seeking to do better. And so, what this particular person shared was that when we did the first two modules and the pre work as well, she felt intense. She felt like she was holding on and grasping on so tight, white knuckled and just gripping on for dear life, right? Because of the things she was uncovering. She was just cringing at certain things that she's still doing. And it felt intense because, in some way, the spotlight was on her and her behaviors and the areas where she needs to know and do better. Even though she was aware of it, it just became a little bit more glaring this time around. But when we got to the other modules, module 3 and 4, there was a little bit of a sigh of relief. And I asked, why? Why is this so? Because in the following modules, it's more like telling you what to do, giving you guidelines. Now that you've had that self-discovery, you've done that you have that inner knowing. Now it's let's do the work. Let's do that inner work together. And these are the steps that you can take. There was a sigh of relief because you're being told what to do. And I see a lot of white folks approaching this work in this way of coming to the table of racial equity saying, I've arrived here, Annie. Tell me what to do. What are the steps I need to take right now to have a racially equitable business? What can I do to have more Black friends? What can I do to be more inclusive? What can I do to cause less harm? And it is not just an exercise where you can, go away and just tick boxes and say, I'm doing this. I have an inclusion statement. I'm offering scholarships. I am networking with people of color. It's so much more than that because that's still so surface level. We're not going deep. And so seeking to be told what to do and not applying critical thinking, coming back to point number 4, I know this is a bit of a paradox because, yes, you do need to understand matters of race, and asking questions from an educator is great, but don't just take what they say and leave it there. If you want to grow, you need to go deeper. You need to do some more reading for yourself. You need to get different perspectives so you can understand better and then leave room to apply your critical thinking after you've had those conversations and ask the questions. The danger that lies in just being told what to do is it stops you from thinking for yourself. And you apply a default position of, I don't know what is right. And so I'll just rely on being told what to do. It actually robs you of doing the inner work. Now, I've been using the word inner work for a fair bit in this episode, and I want you to understand what inner work means. And nobody else describes it better than one of my past students, Carrie Allen, who is a founder of Wordified. She is a copywriter. She's brilliant at what she does. And this is what Carrie had to say.
I joined Represented because I really wanted to educate myself on racial equity, and I heard Annie on a podcast and I was just drawn to her nature. She is kind and she is encouraging and she's just the absolute perfect person for this work. So that was my kind of reasons for joining Represented. My biggest takeaway, I feel like it's not really just one takeaway, it's just changed everything. It's changed how I look through the lens of anti-racism now, whereas I didn't before. So that's been a massive change and difference. It's almost like having your eyes opened, really. Yeah, a whole another way to look at the world. So that's definitely been my biggest takeaway. And if you are sitting there, this is what I was like. If you were sitting there and thinking, oh, I keep hearing people talk about doing the work and, but I don't really know what the work is. Is it reading a blog? Is it reading a book? Is it listening to podcasts? What is the work? Represented is for you because Annie gives you a framework. She tells you what the work is. You learn what the work is. It's ongoing work, like it'll never be finished, but you learn what it is and you learn how to weave it into your life. So for me, that was just so valuable. And the second thing is, if you don't know the difference between being not racist, which I think most people would, consider themselves not racist, and anti-racist. If you don't know the difference between those two, represented is for you, because I didn't know the difference. And represented taught me that there is a big difference. And I'm just so grateful to have learned all that I did with Annie. And, it's really, like I said, it's ongoing work, but I'm on the journey, and we're one step at a time. We can all help to make the world more racially equitable. So, join up. I have nothing but good words to say about it.
Welcome back, my friends. A quick recap of the 4 ways people are getting racial equity wrong. Number 1, thinking that you need to call people out on their racism, and that is the only way to do the work and be a good ally. Number 2, thinking that you constantly have to police people and being on the lookout for what word they are using, that is wrong. Number 3, consuming more than you are taking action. And number 4, seeking to be told what to do and not applying critical thinking. If this is work you would like to dive into deeper, we are currently enrolling into the next round of my program, Represented. Now, if you don't know what Represented is by now, you should know, but I'll tell you. It's my 10-week signature program where I support you to understand how to apply a more racially inclusive lens to your life and business. I take you from awareness right through to genuine allyship and how to stay in the work. We are currently having an end of financial year special, and that is $500 off the cost of the program with payment plans included, because I want to ensure as many people who require access are able to get in. So for further details, head over to anigishuru.com/represented.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.
Represented.